we did do. We had worship on Sunday in between, and these things were definitely on my mind and on my heart in uh, um, before, like leading up to it. I think more so than in the past. Thinking about like cultivating worship in my own heart, um, and around the songs um, that we chose to do, so that when I got there, I was like, I've been.
Felt faith.
I felt faith, and I felt like more comfortable in like music aside, just because like I've been ministering. This has been ministering to my heart leading up to this to Sunday, and then that just I feel like enabled me more to model worship in that moment.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, guys?
I mean, I think it stuck with me a little bit more in my personal worship throughout the week. Just kind of a good reminder of like what that should look like for me. So then when we come in on Sunday morning to lead worship, that it kind of like he was saying, just like you feel a little bit more, I guess faith is the word y'all are using for it, and a little more comfortable with it. You're like, this is what I've been doing all week. It's no different. There's some differences. Let me clarify. but
Extra people hanging out.
yeah, right, exactly. But like you're leading by example in that, and that the worship you're doing up there is demonstrating what their worship should look like at home in their own personal time. So as well as for yourself.
Cool.
I was not here on Sunday. I did check out the live stream though, because I was in Houston, and yeah, y'all did great. But it's more so kind of like what Caleb said, impacted more so like my personal, like quiet time or whatnot. Making a habit more of when, how you were saying last week, of making sure that you're engaging in private worship on your own, and building faith and whatnot. Normally, like, I'm listening to worship music or whatnot in the car, but never worshiping to it. Like, it's just on. And so last week after our meeting, and then this weekend when I was driving all over Houston, whatnot, made a habit of like putting it on and being like, I'm going to listen to what these are saying and just tune my heart to hear what God is like, his attributes, like in these songs and whatnot. And
I love it.
Had a good impact.
Yeah, so when I say faith, what I'm talking about is faith specifically that what you're doing right now is from God and not from you. So that confidence level that I have heard from God, and God is right now affirming in my spirit that what I am doing, he likes. You know, and that's the essence of true worship. Worship in spirit is like prayer in spirit. It's like a two-way thing. It's not just me saying things to God. It's a relational dynamic, and God's saying stuff to me too. And so being tuned into that is very important. So thank you guys for the feedback. And for me personally, and I don't think that this is because I expected things to be different. I think it's real. What I experienced was a very strong sense of the presence of the Lord while you were worshiping. Not that I don't always experience that, but it was very strong. It felt very pronounced when you guys were leading us in worship. So it was very happy and joyful to have that shared experience of God inhabiting our praises, which is what it says, that he inhabits the praises of his people, right? So we know that the word says that, but when we become aware that that's happening, it's really cool. So that's what I experienced. And so you talked last week about, like, what specifically do you mean by the presence? And so again, not getting specific, but just saying what I experienced as the presence of the Lord, I experienced Sunday while you guys were leading us in worship. So it was very cool. Okay? So I want to shift gears a little bit. This is about process. Okay? And I've been working on this for many years. I've never actually delivered it to the worship team. And the reason why is because for this to actually mean anything, it has to be carried by the main worship leader. And so as we've had different worship leaders, I've interacted with them and haven't gotten to a point until now, and we'll see how it goes from now. Because, again, this is always a conversation, but this is something that really, the main focus today is to talk through, this is my vision for worship at this church. Okay? So when a worship leader says, I want to hear the vision from the pastor and I want to carry that, that's when this becomes something useful for our whole church. Right now, what I am offering it to you guys is as equipping as an example. Because I think that I've received the vision that I have from the Lord, and it's been very what I've developed here has been developed. I pulled things from many different sources. So this isn't from me, and it isn't done in isolation. It's done from many different people that I respect a lot, and kind of gleaning from everybody and kind of putting it together and saying, okay, Lord, but how does this fit into what I think should be happening at our church? And so that, from that perspective, I put this together, and I offer this to you guys, as I said, as an example. And Asa, if you're planning to continue here and you feel called to lead things while you're here, then I would like to continue talking about this. Okay? But right now, the way it is right now, it doesn't incorporate any feedback from anyone else. I put it together. This is the way I see it. And I think that, things like vision and values, stuff like that, needs to be a conversation. So let's talk about what's in here. We really have a hard stop at 4. So we can't like go, I'm not going to read this to you guys. Let's put it that way. But I'm going to kind of hit the topics. And then I'm going to send you guys a link to this. I have it in my Microsoft Office 365 cloud. So I'm going to send you guys a link to it and give you guys all permission to edit it. And then I'm going to ask you guys to just, any feedback you have, just put it in there, in line in the thing. Like when we get to the values, if there are values that you think are missing, that are really important to you, or values that you think are redundant, or anything like that, just put your thoughts right there in the document, because I would love to hear all you guys' feedback. Okay? So if we just kind of look through this, the first thing in here is my letter, and I will read that. It's my letter to people who are interested in being part of worship in our church. And so I'm just going to read it. Hill City Worship volunteers, thank you for your interest in Hill City Worship Ministry. Worship ministry is near and dear to the Lord's heart and also to my own heart. Before I was a pastor, I was a worship leader, and I've served on worship teams for over 15 years. I believe worship ministry is one of the most important ministries in the church. What you do in Hill City Worship is much more than simply performing well or making good Christian music. Hill City Worship reflects and expresses our commitment as a church to honor Jesus as the one who is worthy of highest praise, honor, and glory. Simply put, Jesus is worthy of our greatest efforts to love, honor, and serve him. And Hill City Worship is dedicated to demonstrating this truth in everything we do. In the Westminster Catechism, the Presbyterians say that man's chief aim is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. There is a lot of truth to this. Through your faithful service in Hill City Worship, you are impacting lives for eternity as we lead God's people to fulfill our God-given purpose of glorifying and enjoying God through worship. A book like the one you are holding in your hands right now would usually be called something like a worship ministry handbook, but we're referring to it instead as the worship roadmap. It describes the pathway we're following as a team into committed, devoted worship of the worthy one, Jesus, including why we're doing it and the plans we have for offering him our very greatest efforts in the process. I want to thank you for your willingness to be used by God in Hill City Worship. Worship is in the center of God's purpose for every human being. There is no better place to serve. However, serving in Hill City Worship isn't just about giving. It's joining a team of other like-minded people who are experiencing community and spiritual growth while helping others do the same. My prayer is that while in Hill City Worship, you will experience powerful and lasting life change as you make an impact for eternity in the lives of everyone at Hill City Church. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay? So that's my heart for this roadmap. And if we get to a point where, and I want to say this, when I originally wrote this, our church was much bigger. So there's a lot of process in here that's not appropriate for who we are right now as a church. But so I look at vision as aspirational. Vision is not necessarily either where we are or where we're going to get to immediately, but it's what we wish we were. Okay? So this is where I would like to see us go at some point, God willing, as he gives increase in days to come. Okay? So then I go into some stuff that I think we've already talked about. So why worship? There's some scriptures there, and I'm not going to go into detail there, but there's more scriptural basis for worship in this book than we talked about last week. So this could be valuable to you guys just in your own devotional life around the topic of worship. I really spent a lot of time in this document just collecting and commenting on different scriptures that are directly applicable to worship in music. So it's the primary activity of heaven. So I talk about Revelation 4 and 5 and how worship is what they're doing 24/7 and they never stop. And then we say, the Lord's Prayer, which Jesus said, this is how you should pray. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Obviously, if they're worshiping 24/7 in heaven without ever stopping, I don't think anything's going on in heaven that God doesn't want. So that's a clue to the importance of worship to God's heart, I think. All right? And we already talked about that worship comes from the knowledge of God. So we've got that. And that we also benefit, so we receive. Our primary purpose for worship is not to receive, but we do receive in the act of worship. Okay? And then our mission. So this is on page 3. Knowing the purpose of worship, what is the mission of Hill City Worship? Our mission in Hill City Worship is to know Christ ourselves, which is the reservoir from which true worship flows, to discover our purpose in bringing pleasure to God through praise and worship, and to impact lives for eternity by leading God's people to do the same. We accomplish this in these ways. So these are very practical now. Have a personal relationship with Christ. That falls into the area of surrender. Live in community, belong, mature as believers, grow, impact lives for eternity, advance. Okay, so those are practical things that we want to be doing as members of the worship team. And then our values. So I'm not going to read all these, the details, but the things that I put down here as things that we highly value in Hill City Worship. The fullness of Christ. So so I've talked about how important it is to know Christ as who he really is. So that's the fullness, not just our little slice that we're comfortable with, but everything Scripture says about who Christ is. Intimacy with Jesus. So we talked about how worship itself is an act of intimacy with Jesus. So that is really important. And then joy. We talked about joy last week. God's word is really important to worship. The Holy Spirit, we worship in spirit and in truth. So word and spirit are the key foundation of spirit and truth. Excellence. We didn't really talk about excellence. So what is a commitment to excellence? A commitment to excellence doesn't mean you have to be great or even skilled. A commitment to excellence means our commitment is that we're always working to get better. And we're always looking to pay attention to what we've already done and look at what could be improved. That's a commitment to excellence. It's continual improvement. Growth. That kind of speaks for itself. Worship speaks for itself. And then intentionally developing worshipers and leaders. And so what that means is we're never just like, okay, we got the team we need, this is it. But we're always looking to help other people that may have a heart for worship join the team. Those that join, helping them develop and become more skilled and more spiritual in their worship. And then out of those people, as we see those that God may be calling to a leadership role, helping lift them up into that leadership role. So we're very intentional about trying to develop people. Okay? So now this is defining the different areas. So we have musicians and singers. That's the people who are actually doing the music. Light and sound. Those are the two key roles. It's basically technical and musical. The team, these are things that we really don't have, right? Volunteers, coordinators, worship leader, and director. It'd be great to have a director. So Jason informally was our director. But we would like someday to see someone step into a role as a director who would like actually do something like what's in this document, very much so. Okay? So our age requirements have been consistent throughout the whole church. We'd like people to be 13 or older before they join. And let's see, what is 18? What's the difference between 13 and 18? Oh, we don't want them to be a leader until they're 18. So we're asking them to develop until they're 18 and then possibly be eligible for leadership after they're over 18. Yeah, because there is so worship, and I've seen this over many years, that the role of worship team puts people on a stage in front of everybody, and it's an opportunity for a heart to get twisted off of what's important to the Lord. And the younger we are, the more likely we are to misunderstand that. And so we want people to be seasoned for a time before we give them an opportunity to be a leader over people that maybe are even older than them. So that's why. I don't want to corrupt their heart by putting, even though they may be gifted and have the skill and the ability to lead, I want to kind of wait a little bit, and I think it's good for their heart to wait a little while, even though they may say, hey, I can do this, it helps their heart to learn patience and respect for everyone else on the team, to just pause for a while and wait until they're a little older to take that role. That's my perspective on it.
We don't have to go much deeper into it.
No, that's great. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I would just like some biblical examples for it.
Good. Yeah. So biblical examples. Well, I would say that you see the people that God chose as leaders who turned out great, going through a season of preparation for that role, even though they were marked by God early in life. Like David is a good example. David was marked for leadership as a very young man. And he had some opportunities to excel sort of as an individual contributor kind of thing, like Goliath was an individual contributor role, right? But God took many years seasoning him before he put him in as king. And he had to actually go through some real hardships, and it was good for him. Another example, I think, is Joseph. Joseph was marked out by God as a very young man. And he actually was very rough toward his brothers and his parents in the way he communicated that, and had a lot of backlash. And God took him through a long season of being in subject to others before he opened that door, and it was good for Joseph's heart that he went through that. And I think Daniel is another example of the same thing. So those are three of my guys that I think are some of the great leaders in Scripture, that each one of them had a time early in their life where they were marked out as exceptional, but God kept them kind of under subjection for a time period until they were seasoned to be able to step into the leadership role that he had picked out for them. Okay? And I think the Scripture says, don't, we're talking about ordaining elders in the church. It says, don't lay hands on anyone suddenly. In other words, don't be in a hurry to put someone in that leadership role. And then Paul, I don't know what the verse is, but Paul talked about testing someone before you put them in a position of high responsibility. And it's because we're all fallen people, and we need to face our own flaws and failures in the light of the Spirit of God. We need to go through that tunnel and come face to face with our own weakness. And that helps us then to be a better leader. If we lead out of self-awareness, then we can be gentle and kind to other people. If we come in with all the spunk and gumption of a teenager who's all that, then even though we're really gifted and we can do things better than everybody else, we might not be a very effective leader for people whose hearts really need to be shepherded and cared for. So we want someone in that leadership role who will bring that attitude, who will bring a shepherding and caring perspective to hearts that really need that. You know, even you might have a guy on your team who's just like, he should be at Juilliard, you know, just fantastic guy, but that guy still needs care and nurturing from a good leader who will help him through the process of being everything God has called him to be. And so we want leaders who are seasoned enough to be able to do that well. So it's really, the reason we do that is out of concern for the team. It's really, and that's what I want all of you guys, maybe the most important thing to carry away as a worship leader, if you're leading a team, is your first priority is Jesus, honoring him. Your second priority is the hearts of the people on your team, caring for them. And if you get those two, that's 80% of doing it right. Okay? So, all right. So then we get into some very practical stuff. And these are things that I find, as a pastor, I have found it really hard to call people on this. I found it really challenging, personally, to hold people accountable to stuff like showing up on time and stuff like that. So I pretty much haven't done it. And so people have done pretty much whatever they want. And that's on me. But I would like to see this shift to, if not the timings that I have in this book, at least have a timing. And say, this is when we're going to be here. And we as a team are going to hold each other accountable to be here and to have certain things that we have on the clock that we're going to be doing this by this time. But that's just respectful to everybody, in my opinion. It's to me, and as a worship leader, I was always the first guy here. And there have been many times when I was the first guy here and worship was supposed to start and nobody showed up for a half hour, you know. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do the best we can, but we're not going to really be prepared for what we need to do because I had enough material for the whole thing, and now we only have 15 minutes left to work on it, you know, so that's challenging. So arrive on time and then be prepared. Those two things. These are really, if you're in a role as a leader of a team, how to help people carry this in their own heart, because you don't want to put it on people. You want everybody to hold each other accountable, right? You want a good team dynamic. A good team, everybody's all in. And we're gonna give each other a hard time if somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to, right? Not in a mean way, but just good humored and going, okay, guys, let's all treat each other right as a team, okay? So arriving on time and coming prepared. I talked last week about memorizing your material, and I think that is it's not necessarily required kind of stuff, but it sure does help you be more effective. I've seen it. It really makes a difference. So I do hold that up as something to aspire to. I think you guys as a team, all this stuff, again, I'm not putting this on you guys as a burden, but I'm just sharing it from my heart, my vision, my aspirations, what I in the best world would love to see happening. So I have that on here. Music stands versus memorization. Music stands should be for reference and notes only. You shouldn't have your eyes glued to your music. You should face out to the congregation. You should be making eye contact with the people. As a worship leader, you want that to be very personal with the people, you and them. It's like you're dancing. They're your dance partner. So keep that love connection with the people. Keep looking at them. Keep loving them. Keep caring about them while you're leading the worship. Make sure you're thinking about them. You're thinking about the Lord and you're thinking about the people you're leading. And so here, there's a bunch of stuff about appearance. And I think these are good rules. I'm not telling you guys you have to enforce these rules, but these are the rules that I think are good. So business casual, classy jeans, neutral colors, no t-shirts with graphics where people are looking at your shirt instead of focusing on the worship. We had a worship leader many, many years ago who liked to wear these really horrible, he liked dark rock. And so he had all these rock bands on his shirts. He would wear those when he's leading worship. And I had to keep coming back to him saying, dude, don't wear that to lead worship. You can wear that in your private life all you want to, but when you're up there, you're representing God and you're representing Hill City Church, and you need to do that in a more faithful way that represents who we are as a church. It doesn't mean there's no room for you to be your own personality. There is, but we don't want you promoting something that we as a church can't get behind, if that makes sense. So when you put a really nasty rock band on your shirt and wear it up on the stage, you're promoting something. And the church is like, no, we're not into that, so please don't do that. Make sense? Everybody okay with that? Okay. Prefer you don't wear hats. We've never enforced that, but we prefer you don't. Shorts no less than 2 inches above the knee, so that would be kind of short for worship, being on the worship. You can wear anything you want to when you're not on the stage, but we prefer that you didn't wear short shorts when you're leading worship because you're beautiful. And we don't want people being distracted by you instead of focusing on the Lord. Okay? Yeah, you too. Same thing. That'd be too short, dude. You need to wear out. We don't want people like getting all lusty about your legs, dude. Okay? I know that's funny, but it actually, my sister had to call me out after I became a Christian because it was like the early 80s and guys wore these really stupid shorts in the early 80s. And I was wearing them and she's like, Steve, dude, you don't know what that does to girls. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm clueless. So, yeah, it's a thing. What's that? Good sister, yeah. So I appreciated that, and it made an impact on me. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into all these details. I think they stand for themselves. Prefer that you don't wear see-through shirts. If unless you've got like something under it. So like Vanessa will wear wispy tops with a camisole under it, that kind of thing. Just use common sense, right? Yeah, so a lot of this is team dynamics. This is stuff you guys have to agree on as a team. But for me, I think that rehearsals should be a commitment. Everybody on the team should be committed to come to rehearsals. We should do everything we can to make sure that those are scheduled at a time that everybody can attend. And then once you have that determined, then we would ask people to really make that a commitment to be there at that rehearsal and not schedule other things instead. So we're putting that in here. And so then we set the commitment, the time commitment on Sunday morning, 8 a.m. to noon. So that's a 4-hour block on Sunday morning. Okay? And then I have that actually listed out. Again, I'm not requiring you guys to follow this, but this is my vision for how to make it great. Okay? So I've got it all scheduled out here. Eliminating distractions. So, and so I don't know if I said it in here anywhere. Yeah, I'll get into that in a minute. I'm kind of watching the clock. Eliminating distractions. You guys as a worship team, you really want to make sure, and I don't see you guys doing distracting things, so it kind of goes without saying for you guys, but we don't want you to be doing weird things while you're leading the worship and distracting attention to yourself. And so it is my opinion, and I hold it pretty strongly, that people who are leading worship should reflect joy on their face and in their mannerisms. Should be looking up and out and have their face open and thinking about the Lord, and let the happiness of thinking about the Lord come out on your face. Now that might sound a little bit fake. I don't intend it to be fake, but some people, even though they're happy on the inside, don't let their face know it. And because you are in front of the whole church and you are leading the church, one of the things you're leading them in is how to respond to the presence of the Lord in the room. And one of the responses is joy and happiness. And by letting that come out on your face so people can see it, you're communicating something to them that they need to be led in, because many times people don't have that understanding. They have a more limited understanding of what worship is. It's just singing songs in a group that are about Jesus, like Sunday school. Okay, so your devotional practice of worship throughout the week is hopefully stoking some fire in your soul. You want to keep stoking that fire in your soul. So you want what's on your face to not be fake, but you want to be intentional about letting it out on your face. That makes sense. And not to the extent of like making a big deal out of it either. Like, just be naturally happy and let your face know it. This is what I'm saying. So don't be focused on the music on your stand. Be looking at the room. Keep the stage uncluttered. Sometimes we have cases out in the room. Let's not have cases out in the room. Sometimes we have our side doors open. Let's make sure the doors are closed. Things like that, to just keep everything uncluttered and clean so that it's all about Jesus and people aren't looking up there and going, why is that door open? What's behind that door? You know, we just don't want any of those things that cause people's minds to go off in the weeds. Sound booth is another area that we've kind of gone back for. Stephen has done a good job of cutting back on the clutter back there, so I appreciate that. You've done a good job of helping organize and declutter back there. as well as in other areas in the side rooms. So a lot of work has gone into that, and we just want to keep it up because that's actually important. It's important to worship itself. It's also important for you guys. There may be stuff back there that nobody knows is back there but you, but just having clutter back there can affect your emotional state. So we want you guys to be clean and clear on the inside and happy to be here and not have, oh man, you just had to go back there to do something. You're like, man, it's such a mess back there. And then you come back on the stage and now you're going to worship. Okay? And then, this is a big deal to me. Honoring God's presence and the flow of worship. We did talk about this last week. So I talk a lot about that. I've got 2 pages of this and it's small type. Okay? Just hit a few high points. Talking about his presence. We didn't really talk about the legitimacy of the concept of the presence of God in spiritual terms. So I talk about that a little bit. But there's a flow of worship, so I talk about the flow of worship and learning as worship leaders to be in touch with that as a truth, as a reality. That's an important part of what worship needs to be. Many excellent worship teams musically, I've noticed, do not give any attention to the spiritual presence of the Lord. And it's a notable absence. When I'm in the room, I'm like, they are not tuning in to God's presence. What they're doing is not responsive to the presence of the Lord. Let's put it that way. We want what we're doing as worship leaders to be responsive to his presence. And so there's I feel that it is a holy duty as worship leaders to pay attention to God's presence. That's why we worship. His presence is why we worship. So it's like ignoring his presence is like the one that we're all here to express love to is in the room and we're pretending like he's not in the room. Okay? So mystery, I talk about mystery, I talk about romance. We're singing love songs to him. He's in the room. The sweetness, the wonder, the weight, the awesomeness of being in the middle of the reality of his manifest presence in worship. So I really want you guys to, it's printed words on the page. I want you guys to go explore what that means to you personally in your own devotional time, in your worship time. Because I think that this is the most important part of being a worship leader. Of everything you do as a worship leader, what's in that paragraph is the most important thing to me. We are serenading God. And so being conscious that God's here and he's the one I'm singing to right now. Letting myself be filled with awe over the fact that he's right here, right now, listening to what I'm doing. There's something very, very awesome in the holiest sense of that word about that moment when that is what's happening and when you're aware that that's what's happening. Okay? So we don't want to break the romance of the moment. So I encourage you guys to just read through that on your own and talk to the Lord about it. Go into your devotional time about it. And this is why in our preparation, we want to give attention to transitions and about not breaking the flow. Okay? Avoid uncomfortable moments where the music stops and the musician starts flipping through pages of music on their music stand and everyone's aware that you're doing something that's not worship. You're just kind of doing mechanical stuff to get to the next point. We don't want that to intrude into a very romantic moment with the Lord for the whole room, for everybody in the room. And I prefer if the music doesn't stop, personally. Not everybody agrees with that, but that's my preference. I like the IHOP model. That's what IHOP does. They never stop the music. And I like that. So that's why the wide music stand, I bought that so that whoever's leading if you have everything on a single sheet for each song, and you have 4 songs, you can put all 4 of them side by side on the stand and never have to touch the stand. And if you have it memorized, then even that is not a big deal. But being able to have it all laid out in front of you, and then you can just do what you're doing on your instrument and with your voice, and not have to fiddle with music. And not everybody can do that, but the intent is for that wide stand to be the province of whoever is leading that session. And silence is okay, just as long as it's the Holy Spirit who is impressing on your heart that we need to go silent right now. Like a silent moment of awe, that's awesome. I love it. When God's leading in it, it's very powerful, and everybody can feel it. It's like, whoa. You know, that's a cool thing. So be free to do what's right, but don't do it just kind of mechanically for no reason except that you just don't know what's next until you flip through your stuff. Prayers and verbalizations. Make sure those are non-distracting from the focus on His presence. Those are great. Do that, but let it carry the same sense of awe of His presence that everything else we're doing is. Keep it in the same mindset and the same heart as all the rest of the flow of worship. Okay? And then I talk about intentional development. So we haven't done this for a long time, but Jason was doing this for a while, and when Rachel was leading here, she was doing this open mic night. And that is something that when you have a bigger church and you have people out there that you don't even know what their capabilities are yet, that's a good way to find out. So just scheduling that twice a year is what we used to do. And that would just be a chance to hear what everybody, and it doesn't, there's like no judgment at all. You can come and wail like a goose, and we're just going to love them and encourage them, but they might not be invited on the worship team. But it's just a chance for everybody to come, almost like a talent show kind of thing. Get people a chance, and then you might hear somebody that you had no idea they could do that. And so that's a chance to find out stuff like that. And then, so these are some things that we actually did, we have done in the past. Developmental rehearsals. This would be a chance for people to participate in rehearsal who are not part of the worship team itself, but they're interested. And so you give them a chance to come to a few rehearsals and worship with the team, even though they're not going to necessarily yet be part of any actual worship set. So those are good. And when you have somebody that wants to be on the team and they're not ready yet, give them 4 to 6 weeks of developmental rehearsals to grow and develop and see if they can come up to where they need to be in that amount of time. Community dinners for the worship team. We used to do that. That's cool. Just building community is a good thing. Service attendance, we want people to not only, like if we used to rotate teams. And we would prefer for people not to only come to church when they're on a team and then not show up if they're not on the stage. We want the right heart. So we would appreciate if folks will actually come and be committed to this church in addition to being committed to the worship team. So these are some expectations. I think they're self-explanatory for the worship team, for the tech team. A little more heavy if you're a worship leader, so a little more detail there on the worship leader, just kind of spelled out a little bit more. And then we ask volunteers and leaders to be connected, all volunteers and leaders, not just the worship team. Be connected. So be part of what we're doing as a church. Join a life group. We don't have life groups going on right now, but we have things like we have our ladies' meetings and our men's meetings. Those are things that'd be important to participate in. Pursue your personal relationship with God with diligence. So we're asking everybody to be We want to see that you are seeking to grow as a follower of Christ. Train. So whatever your area, whatever you're volunteering in, we would like to see you investing in that, getting better at that. So as a worship, someone a part of the worship team, we want to see you getting better at your instrument, getting better at your voice. So I'll bring this up. I know that Ava has been on teams in the past. She struggles to hit her notes on key. And so that is an area that I would like to see. I know she wants to be part. I would like to see her, but I don't know, do you know how to help a singer? Are there specific exercises and training things they can do to develop more skill at singing on pitch?
I'd have to listen to her and see what her particular issue is, but it varies if she's falling flat or sharp. There are different ways to correct.
She sings on key sometimes, so she's very capable of singing on key, but she just doesn't sing on key all the time, and sometimes she's badly off.
It probably just depends on ear training and then just seeing where her tessitura falls.
Okay.
It's mostly with harmonies. She's just not
Mostly with
great.
harmonies, yeah.
She's not great at
Yep.
harmonies, which is something she just has to practice.
It's ear
Yep.
training.
Yep.
She could do lessons.
They can be pretty bad sometimes. But these are things that, we want to be committed to everybody learning and growing in the thing that they're passionate about, whatever that is. And so when that thing is worship and they're not quite there yet, then we want them to feel like we're committed to them getting better, helping them. So, and then contributing. So that's about everything, time, finances, serving. So that each one of us is looking to carry our fair share of the burden of the ministry. Okay, so there's a lot of rules and things, and so I have this little piece at the back. You guys probably don't need this, but I just threw this in there for anybody who is put off by the fact that this has a lot of process and standards and things in it. Why so many rules? So I think I like this question. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather be a part of a worship community that does not ensure that Jesus is being loved, honored, and served in excellence at all times, or one that does? And so the purpose of having standards and things that we all agree to commit to is that we all then together can become confident that we're giving our best as a team to worship. Okay? So that's what that's about. And I think that's it. And we have 10 minutes to go. Thoughts or comments, guys?
Just a quick, this
Sure.
isn't the mic, but before we get this video to other people, it might be good to cut out the part that let's just talk about.
Yeah, I will. I'll edit. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I can say something. Yeah, I think it's just good to always, because I've been on, let me see. Sorry, let me slow down for just a second. I think it's good to recognize that all the rules that you're putting out there and all that are not so that it's like a production or a show that we're putting on. And that might be, once you give us access to this stuff, something that
Maybe fine tune some things. Yeah.
make a note on there, just make it known several times throughout there, because that's something that it's just really easy to get caught up in.
Yes.
It's like we could do all these things to make this look and sound so much better, and it just gets really easy to start going down a path that kind of
Professionalism versus spiritual
right, and kind of
focus.
lose sight of why are we doing this? Because I mean, you can go down that path and do all those things and still have the right mindset of okay, I'm doing these things so that in one way or another we can bring more honor and worship God in a better way. But it's also really easy to just be okay, I just want to make it look better and sound better, and it ends up being more like a concert. And I've been on both sides of that. And I've even, when I was doing the internship here, like started doing some stuff that, like, luckily, like I think it was the Holy Spirit just kind of correcting me and just being like, pull it back a little bit. What are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? What's
Right.
this for? And I just had to be like, okay, like that's not important right now. Let me focus on something else. And that's like you'd think that would be something that you really only run into when you're at a bigger church where the production is like huge and
Right.
you've got all these slides and stuff like that. But it's something you can run into even at a church this size. And I say that because of what I just talked about with the
Right,
experience.
right.
So, yeah.
Anybody else? Thoughts or feedback?
I just say I appreciate this resource. I'm excited to dig into it and to continue in all the things that we aspire to as a body, as leaders.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing back from you guys when I get you the soft copy that you can edit. And would you make sure I have email for everybody on the team? In our we have text, so if you could just get everybody's email to me, then I'll get that out to you guys. Okay? Thank you guys. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
And we might have another meetup after we incorporate all the stuff to talk through kind of the final document.
Okay.
Okay?